My sister humiliated me at a luxury resort saying I wasn't real family, so I showed my millionaire grandfather exactly how much money he wasted on her. My name is Marina, I'm 29 years old and I live in Sao Paulo. I earn about 15,000 Brazilian reals per month working as a financial analyst at a mid-sized company. I know it seems like a decent salary, but wait until you meet the absolutely extravagant lifestyle of the rest of my family. This is the story of years of humiliation, family contempt, and the most satisfying revenge you can imagine. Let me paint a vivid picture of my childhood so you understand why this turnaround was so gratifying. While my sister Isabella competed in beauty pageants, dated famous soccer players, and was treated like a celebrity in our town, I was the weird girl who cared more about studying, saving money, and building a real future. My parents, Roberto and Mariana, made it very clear from the start who was the golden child and who was just taking up space in the family. When Isabella turned 18, she got a brand new Audi A3 with a huge red bow on the hood. I'm talking about an 180,000 Brazilian reals car for a girl with no job, no responsibilities, who had never worked a single day in her life. The entire neighborhood gathered to see her scream and jump as if she had won the lottery. She posted on all social media, calling it the happiest day of my life and praising her amazing parents. When I turned 18, I got a 2005 Fiat Palio with 220,000 kilometers on it that my father bought from a coworker for 8,000 Brazilian reals. "This builds character," he said, while Isabella smiled in the background, probably already thinking about her next extravagant request. Despite graduating with honors, I finished college with 85,000 Brazilian reals in student loan debt because I refused to ask my parents for help after seeing how they handled financial requests. While studying business and finance, I worked two part-time jobs, one at a coffee shop from 6 p.m. to midnight and another as a waitress at a local restaurant on weekends. Shortly after graduation, Isabella hit what she considered the ultimate jackpot. She married Rodrigo, a real estate businessman who supposedly earns over 80,000 Brazilian reals per month. Now she lives in a 6-bedroom mansion in the city's most exclusive gated community, drives a BMW X6, and posts Instagram stories every 2 months from Punta Cana, Miami, and Paris. Her social media became this carefully curated display of wealth that honestly embarrassed me for her. Meanwhile, I was working 60 hours a week, eating instant noodles for dinner, and slowly paying off my debt like a responsible adult. Don't get me wrong, I did very well through hard work and smart decisions. I have about 120,000 Brazilian reals saved. My loans are completely paid off, and I invest regularly every month. I drive a reliable Honda Civic and live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a middle-class neighborhood. I'm dating Lucas, a university professor who earns about 12,000 Brazilian reals per month. Lucas is down to earth, saves money, invests wisely, and represents everything Isabella is not. But according to my family, I was wasting my life with a failed teacher when I could be pursuing someone real. Isabella never misses an opportunity to make passive-aggressive comments about my life choices. She says things like, "Marina, when are you going to get a real job that pays enough for you to actually enjoy life instead of just surviving? Or maybe if you spent less time obsessed with spreadsheets and more time networking with successful people, you'd understand how the world really works." She always delivers these comments with this fake voice of concern that makes me want to scream, as if she were genuinely worried about my sad and pathetic existence while showing off her newest Louis Vuitton bag that costs more than my monthly rent. The worst part was watching my parents nod their heads as if her criticisms were completely valid and helpful. As if I were really a disappointment for choosing financial independence instead of marrying into money. But here's what makes this whole story even more satisfying. Our grandfather, Mr. Antonio, built a construction empire from nothing. He started with an old combi van, a toolbox, and willingness to work 16 hours a day in any weather. After decades of hard work, smart investments, and treating people fairly, he became the owner of one of the largest construction companies in Sao Paulo. He's worth between 40 Brazilian reals and 50 million Brazilian reals, and has always been passionate about teaching family values like hard work, saving, and earning what you get through merit, not favors. Somehow, that lesson only stuck with me. The rest of my family treats my grandfather as if he were a personal ATM. They all live completely inflated lifestyles, funded entirely by his generosity, and then have the audacity to look down on me for being unsuccessful and lacking ambition. Every year, Grandpa Antonio organizes an elaborate Christmas family trip to bring everyone together and maintain family ties. He pays for everything because he believes family unity is worth any price. Last year's trip was supposed to be at a luxury resort in Campos do Jordão, and I was looking forward to it because work had been absolutely brutal and I desperately needed a break from the constant stress. Grandpa had booked everything months in advance because he wanted this trip to be extra special for reasons I didn't understand at the time. The Christmas trip was planned for a luxury resort that charges 2,500 Brazilian reais per night for basic rooms, which included 400 Brazilian reais per person dinners, 600 Brazilian reais spa treatments, and activities that cost more than most people spend on grocery shopping in an entire month. I drove from Sao Paulo after finishing an important project at work on Friday, arriving at the resort around 8 p.m. The place was absolutely ridiculous in the most ostentatious way possible, with exposed wooden beams that probably cost more than my car and natural stonework that looked like it belonged in a museum. There were huge fireplaces with chimneys that could probably fit a small person inside, and people walked around in casual clothes that easily cost 10,000 Brazilian reais per outfit, casually discussing their plans for private tours and exclusive restaurant dinners. I felt a bit underdressed in my normal North Face jacket and jeans, but figured no one would notice. I was there to spend time with my family, not compete in some kind of fashion show. I walked up to the reception with my simple suitcase, gave my name to the attendant, and waited while she typed on the computer with growing confusion. She started to frown and type more aggressively. After more frowning and irritated sighs, she called her supervisor, who repeated the process with the same result. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I don't see any reservation under your name in our system. Let me try other spellings and see if it's under a family member's name." That's when I heard Isabella's voice behind me, and I could feel something was wrong just by her tone. There was this strange theatrical element that I remembered from childhood whenever she was about to cause trouble. "Oh my God, Marina, you actually made it. Wasn't sure if you could get time off from your little job." But she sounded too cheerful, as if she were putting on a show for an imaginary audience. When I turned around, there she was in a designer outfit that probably cost more than I spend on clothes in an entire year, a clearly custom-made jacket, pants with metallic details, and boots that looked like they belonged in a fashion magazine rather than on a real person. She had that strange smile on her face that I recognized from childhood, exactly the same expression she had right before telling Mom and Dad that I had supposedly done something wrong to get me in trouble. The reception staff kept frantically searching the computer system while other guests started gathering behind me, clearly irritated by the delay. You could feel the tension building as wealthy people in fancy clothes waited for this problem to resolve. Isabella approached and commented, loud enough for everyone to hear, "How strange that there's no room reserved for you. I don't know how this happened." She came even closer and lowered her voice to a whisper, which she no doubt thought was appropriate. "Actually, Marina, I had a long conversation with Grandpa about our accommodations for this trip. We both agreed that we only needed rooms for real family members this year." She raised her voice again. "You know, people who actually contribute something valuable to family gatherings, instead of just showing up expecting handouts." My stomach dropped completely when the implications hit me. "What are you talking about, Isabella?" "Grandpa personally invited everyone. So we have the presidential family suite for me, Rodrigo, and our twins. Mom and Dad have a magnificent corner room with mountain views." She paused theatrically, evidently enjoying every moment. "I guess there wasn't enough room for everyone who wanted to come. You know how expensive these places are, right?" The lobby went completely silent except for the crackling of the fireplace, and I looked around to see my parents sitting in leather armchairs near the main fireplace. When I made direct eye contact with them, both looked away like cowards. Rodrigo was near the concierge desk, fiddling with his phone as if nothing was happening, and the 7-year-old twins were running around the lobby, completely oblivious to the adult drama unfolding around them. Isabella continued her carefully planned presentation saying, "Let's be realistic here. You couldn't afford to stay at a property like this with your small analyst salary. Maybe there's an Ibis or a budget hotel on the road, down the mountain." She actually started laughing as she said this, as if the idea of me staying at a budget hotel was the funniest thing she'd ever imagined. Several other guests were now openly staring at our family drama, and the reception attendant looked mortified, probably wondering if she should call security. The supervisor was pretending to be busy with important papers while clearly listening to every word of this embarrassing conversation. Isabella, what the hell is going on here? Grandpa personally invited and approved my presence. Oh dear. Grandpa understood perfectly when I explained the whole situation to him. We need to focus on people who are genuinely important to our family's prosperous future. She gestured dramatically toward Rodrigo, who still hadn't looked up from his phone. I mean, Rodrigo's company just won a 30 million Brazilian reals commercial development contract last month. That's real success. That's the kind of achievement we should be celebrating and supporting as a family. Isabella had deliberately and meticulously planned this entire scenario to humiliate me in front of complete strangers, in order to prove some twisted point about family hierarchy and her perceived superiority. At that precise moment, something clicked in my brain. This wasn't some innocent misunderstanding or computer error. I stood there for about 20 seconds, just processing what was happening. Isabella looked at my face with obvious satisfaction, probably hoping I would beg for help or make some kind of desperate scene that would embarrass me even more. My parents were still avoiding eye contact like the cowards they always were. Instead of feeling angry or hurt, as Isabella clearly desired, I felt a strange sense of crystal clarity. Rodrigo continued to act as if nothing was happening, and the other hotel guests were getting increasingly uncomfortable with the public family breakdown. Like puzzle pieces that had been scattered for years, suddenly fitting together to create a picture I had never seen before. You know what, Isabella? You're completely right about everything. Her confident smile faltered slightly when confusion crossed her face. I'm sorry. What did you say? You're absolutely right. I should leave this place quickly. I picked up my phone and opened a ride-sharing app with deliberate calm. I wish you and the real family an absolutely wonderful Christmas together. She looked genuinely confused because this clearly wasn't the reaction she had carefully planned. Wait, that's it? You're just giving up without even trying to resolve this? No. I'm making a conscious decision based on new information. Have fun explaining to Grandpa tomorrow morning why I won't be at Christmas breakfast. When I tell Grandpa how inappropriate and theatrical you were in this situation, he'll understand completely. I turned once more and gave her the widest, most sincere smile I'd had in months. I'm absolutely certain he will, Isabella. I'm convinced he'll understand everything perfectly. The trip down the mountain gave me plenty of time to think clearly for the first time in years and plan. You see, Isabella had made a critical mistake that was about to destroy her entire fake life. She assumed I was still the same helpless little sister she used to bully when we were kids. She had no idea what kind of position I was in, or what I knew about the family's true financial situation. Here's what Isabella didn't know, and why her little trick was about to backfire spectacularly. First, I've been helping Grandpa with his business finances for the past 5 years. Second, I was the one who convinced him to modernize his accounting and transfer everything to secure digital systems. He called me whenever he had a question about investments, tax strategies, retirement planning, or financial analysis. And I knew more about his money, concerns, and future plans than anyone else in the family combined. I helped set up his online banking, organized his investment accounts, and digitized decades of paper records. I have legitimate access to financial information that would make Isabella's head spin if she knew what I could see. Third, and most important for what was about to happen, Grandpa had been increasingly concerned about the family's spending habits and sense of entitlement. He made several pointed comments over the years about people who live beyond their means and expect favors instead of working to earn things in life. And he expressed deep concern about what would happen to his hard-earned money after he was gone, and if anyone in the family understood its value. I called Grandpa from the airport while waiting for my flight back to Sao Paulo. Marina, what's wrong? Shouldn't you be at the resort with everyone else? I told him the truth. No drama, no emotional manipulation, no exaggeration. Just the facts. How Isabella had deliberately excluded me from the room reservations. Her specific comments about real family members. The public humiliation in front of other hotel guests. And my parents' cowardly refusal to defend their own daughter. The silence on the other end of the line lasted about 45 seconds, which seemed like an eternity. When Grandpa finally spoke again, his voice had changed from warm and concerned to icy and resolute. Well, I think it's time for certain members of this family to learn about the true consequences of their behavior. Grandpa, you don't need to do anything dramatic. I'm fine, actually. I'll just spend Christmas at home. Marina, come to my office first thing Monday morning. I have some extremely serious business matters to discuss with you. Bring your laptop and any financial analysis software you own. Monday morning, I'm sitting in Grandpa's office, which looks like a museum of Brazilian business success, with dark wood paneling on all the walls, leather chairs that have probably been there since the 1970s, and dozens of awards and photos from 45 years in the construction business. That's when I realized Isabella had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Grandpa was tired but resolute, reminding me why he had been so successful for so many decades. Marina, I want to know exactly how much money I've given your parents and your sister over the years. Every cash gift, loan, and emergency payment. Can you help me compile this information into a detailed analysis? That's where my financial analysis skills became useful in ways I never imagined. I spent the following week reviewing bank records, transfer logs, tax documents, canceled checks, and digital payment records. Grandpa gave me complete access to his personal accounts, business accounts, and financial records dating back 20 years. And what I discovered was absolutely mind-blowing and worse than I could have imagined. Here's what I discovered about Isabella in the last decade. She received 95,000 Brazilian reals for the wedding, which she claimed was just enough to cover basic expenses. But I found receipts indicating they spent over 150,000 Brazilian reals in total. She received 180,000 Brazilian reals as a gift for the house down payment, followed by another 65,000 Brazilian reals 2 years later, when they decided to renovate the kitchen with imported marble countertops and professional appliances. For the past 6 years, she's been receiving 8,500 Brazilian reals per month to help with children's expenses and cost of living adjustments, totaling over 600,000 Brazilian reals in direct monthly payments. But there was much more. Emergency loans that were never repaid, totaling 120,000 Brazilian reals for a business opportunity that never materialized. Birthday and Christmas gifts over the years, about 85,000 Brazilian reals, more than most people spend on annual car payments. Funded vacations, jewelry purchases, and furniture subsidies, probably another 140,000 Brazilian reals over the years. My parents, who had been operating the same system for years, were no better. They had spent 180,000 Brazilian reals on various schemes and investments that never worked out. Grandpa paid off their 420,000 Brazilian reals mortgage when they claimed to be struggling with retirement planning. And he had been supplementing their retirement income with 7,500 Brazilian reals per month for the past 7 years, because their savings were insufficient for the lifestyle they deserved, over 630,000 Brazilian reals in direct monthly payments. This included home renovations, medical bills, car payments, insurance premiums, emergency repairs, and unexpected expenses. In the last decade, these people received well over 2 million Brazilian reals in direct favors, not including smaller gifts, dinners, vacations, or other perks that are harder to evaluate. Meanwhile, I had asked Grandpa for help only once in my adult life, a 12,000 Brazilian reals loan when I was between jobs for 2 months after college, which I paid back with interest in 5 months and never asked for anything else. But this is where the investigation got really interesting and revealed how fake their lifestyle was. I decided to do a serious investigation into Isabella and Rodrigo's real financial situation using public record databases that I have access to through my work. I know how to read financial documents, court records, and business documents in ways most people don't, and what I discovered was absolutely shocking. Their house is mortgaged to the absolute maximum limit. They owe 2.8 million Brazilian reals on a property currently worth about 2.4 million Brazilian reals in today's market. Both luxury cars are leased, which means they're paying monthly fees for vehicles they'll never own. Isabella's credit card debt is completely insane. I found at least 16 different accounts with significant balances, totaling over 280,000 Brazilian reals. According to public business records, Rodrigo's company had been struggling for the past 2 years, with 4 major development projects failing due to financing issues. Remember how Isabella used to brag about his 30 million Brazilian reals contract and annual income of 80,000 Brazilian reals? His biggest commercial client terminated the contract in October after delays and cost overruns. The company had defaulted on 3 significant construction loans and was basically operating on borrowed time and credit extensions. They were living a completely fraudulent lifestyle, funded entirely by massive debt and Grandpa's monthly payments. When I presented all this information to Grandpa in a detailed written report, he sat there quietly for about 15 minutes, slowly leafing through the documents with growing anger. Without those 8,500 Brazilian reals per month, they would be declaring bankruptcy in 60 days. Finally, he looked at me with a unique expression and murmured, "Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. I think it's time for some people to learn what real consequences look like." 3 weeks after the resort incident, Grandpa called a mandatory family meeting at his house, telling everyone it was to discuss important financial and succession planning matters, and that attendance was absolutely necessary for anyone who wanted to be included in his will. I arrived early to help him prepare what would be the most satisfying presentation of my entire life. He had printed everything: bank statements, transfer records, loan documents, property records, business filings, credit reports, all carefully organized in folders with each family member's name written on the front in his careful handwriting. Isabella arrived 30 minutes late in her BMW X6, dressed in another ridiculously expensive outfit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, and she looked genuinely irritated to have to be there, as if it were an inconvenience to her busy schedule of spending other people's money and posting about it online. Rodrigo looked uncomfortable from the moment he walked in. I believe he was starting to realize that his financial situation was deteriorating. My parents arrived as if nothing had happened at Christmas. No apology, acknowledgement, or explanation for their cowardly behavior, just business as usual. Probably believing this meeting was about increasing their monthly allowance or discussing inheritance details. Grandpa started the meeting quite formally. "I asked everyone to be here today because I've been conducting a complete evaluation of my financial support to this family over the past 18 years. Marina helped me gather some truly revealing information, and I think it's time we had a truly honest discussion about money, entitlement, and family values." He distributed the folders with theatrical precision, and I watched Isabella's face as she opened hers and started reading the numbers presented in black and white. The color literally drained from her cheeks when she realized the extent of what she was looking at. Grandpa continued in his most professional tone, "I want each of you to carefully review these statistics and then explain to me why you think you're entitled to this amount of continued financial support." Isabella immediately went into total victim mode. "Grandpa, raising children is really expensive nowadays. Rodrigo and I work so hard to support our family, and with the economy being so unstable and unpredictable." "Isabella." Grandpa's voice cut through her whining like a scalpel through butter. "According to these documents, your husband supposedly earns 80,000 Brazilian reals per month. Please explain in detail why you need an additional 8,500 Brazilian reals per month for me to maintain your lifestyle." "Well, the house payment is really high because we wanted the boys to grow up in a good neighborhood, and they have activities and sports, and we have other necessary expenses that you wouldn't understand. You decided to buy a house you couldn't afford. You decided to lease fancy cars instead of buying reliable transportation. You chose to enroll your children in expensive private programs instead of excellent public options. These were your deliberate decisions, made with the expectation that I would continue funding your lifestyle choices forever. My parents tried to intervene and divert attention. Dad, you know how much we appreciate everything you've done for us over the years, but retirement planning is getting increasingly difficult because of inflation and medical bills. You retired at 60 knowing I would supplement your income forever. You made no attempt to save enough for retirement because you expected me to manage all your financial responsibilities. You treated my generosity as an entitlement instead of a gift. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife, and Isabella began to fear when she realized things weren't going as planned. "Grandpa, what are you trying to say here? Are you threatening us?" "I'm saying that, effective immediately, all financial support to this family is being permanently terminated." The eruption was instant, expected, and really pleasant to witness. Isabella started her fake crying act with crocodile tears and theatrical wailing. My parents started frantically talking over each other about their limited income, medical expenses, and retirement security, while Rodrigo sat there looking like he wanted to disappear through the floor. But Grandpa wasn't finished delivering his verdict. "Additionally, I'm deeply disappointed and personally insulted by the way Marina was treated during our Christmas trip. The deliberate exclusion and public humiliation were completely wrong, and it demonstrated precisely who you've become when you think no one is watching. Isabella's fake tears quickly turned into genuine anger. This is because of her? You're really doing this because of her? She's an adult woman. She should be able to take care of herself without depending on Grandpa like a little baby. Yes, Isabella. She should be able to take care of herself, and she does. She never asked me for ongoing assistance. She paid off her college loans through her own effort. She lives within her means. She treats family members with decency and respect. You might want to think about learning from her example instead of ridiculing it. Oh, please. She's a boring loser who spends her days staring at spreadsheets and has no social life. Rodrigo earns 3 times her current salary. We are the successful members of this family. We are the ones who matter. That's when Grandpa pulled out another folder with a small smile. Actually, Isabella, speaking of Rodrigo's tremendous success. He looked directly at Rodrigo, who had gone extremely pale and was sweating. Marina, could you explain what your financial analysis revealed about commercial real estate? This is probably the moment when any good person should have felt sorry for them, but I didn't. Not one bit. They had been asking for this for years. I opened my laptop and pulled up the extensive financial analysis I had prepared specifically for this moment. Well, based on public records, business filings, and financial documents, Rodrigo's company is essentially bankrupt and has been operating on borrowed time for months. Rodrigo's coloring went from pale to green when he realized his fictitious empire was about to crumble in front of everyone. Marina, you had absolutely no right to investigate my private business affairs. Actually, I had every right. This is all publicly available information from state corporate records and court filings. Your company has defaulted on 5 major construction loans totaling over 8 million Brazilian reals in the past 2 years. Your biggest commercial client terminated the contract in October, citing delays, cost overruns, and quality issues. You haven't closed a development project for over 200,000 Brazilian reals since last summer. Isabella was looking back and forth between me and Rodrigo as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. The fabricated world she had created on social media was crumbling in real time. I continued with deliberate precision. Your personal finances are worse than your corporate condition. Your house is about 400,000 Brazilian reals underwater on its mortgage. You owe 280,000 Brazilian reals in credit card debt across 16 separate accounts. Your car lease payments alone cost 5,200 Brazilian reals per month, which is more than most families pay for housing. The silence in the room was terrible, and you could hear Grandpa's wall clock ticking in the corner. Grandpa leaned forward with evident pleasure. Marina, what did your investigation reveal about Isabella's personal spending habits? According to credit card bills, bank records, and social media activity analysis, I believe Isabella spends about 11,000 Brazilian reals per month on clothes, accessories, beauty treatments, spa visits, and entertainment. That's more than double what the average Brazilian family spends on housing, and that excludes the money she spends on vacations and luxury experiences. Isabella finally lost control. You're an absolute psychopath. Who gives you authority to investigate my personal life like a creepy stalker? This is insane. You did, Isabella. When you chose to shame me publicly and exclude me from family gatherings. When you made it clear you think I'm inferior to your supposedly successful husband. When you treated me like trash in front of strangers. Actions have consequences, and you're going to find out what those consequences look like. Grandpa stood up slowly, with the dignity of a man who had built an empire through hard work. I believe we've covered everything we needed to discuss today. You all have some extremely important decisions to make about your future. Marina, could you kindly stay behind for a few minutes? I have something crucial to discuss with you privately. My parents and Isabella's family left the house in complete turmoil. Isabella was screaming about how everything was unfair and how I had ruined the family with my erratic behavior. Rodrigo looked like he was about to vomit, and my parents were completely devastated. After they left, Grandpa sat down and smiled warmly at me for the first time in weeks. Marina, I've been thinking a lot about updating my will and succession planning lately. My estate planning attorney believes it's definitely time to make some very significant changes to reflect my current understanding of family values and responsibility. He paused, looking at me with those wise eyes that had seen decades of business and family. But before we get to that, there's something else I need you to do for me. Grandpa opened a drawer in his enormous mahogany desk and took out a thick brown paper envelope. He placed it on the table between us, his wrinkled hands resting on it for a moment before pushing it in my direction. I want you to take over complete management of all my investment properties and stock portfolio, not just as a consultant, Marina, but as official administrator with full power of attorney. My heart raced. Grandpa, this is a huge responsibility. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my entire life. He leaned back in his chair, interlacing his fingers over his stomach. For the past 5 years, I've watched you transform my mess of paper records into an organized and efficient system. I've seen you identify investment opportunities that increase my net worth by 18%. More importantly, I've seen you do all this without ever asking for anything in return. He paused, his eyes getting slightly moist. You're the only person in this family who understands the value of money because you were the only one who had to fight for it. And now, I'm going to give you the authority to make decisions that will affect everyone's future. I spent the next 3 months working directly with Grandpa's lawyers, completely restructuring his investments, properties, and succession plans. What I discovered during this process was even more revealing than I had imagined. It wasn't just Isabella and my parents who were bleeding Grandpa's finances. There were distant cousins receiving loans that were never collected. There were uncles who suddenly needed help whenever they wanted a new car. The entire family had become a money-sucking machine, all believing that Grandpa Antonio's well was infinite. I cut it all off. Every single penny. The calls started in approximately 48 hours. First was my Aunt Claudia, my father's sister, who had been receiving 3,000 Brazilian reals per month to help with medical expenses. Expenses I discovered were mainly cosmetic treatments and luxury gym memberships. Marina, dear, there must be some mistake. Your grandfather's monthly deposit didn't hit my account. There's no mistake, Aunt Claudia. Grandpa decided to terminate all recurring payments. If you have legitimate medical expenses, you'll have to document them properly and submit them for approval. Document. But it's always been automatic. This is ridiculous. I'm going to call your grandfather immediately. Feel free. But know that I'm now the one managing all his finances. Any requests will go through me first. The abrupt click of the phone being hung up was music to my ears. My cousin Eduardo was next. He was 35 years old and still trying to find his calling while Grandpa paid his 2,500 Brazilian reals monthly rent for 7 years. Marina, man, what's your deal? Grandpa has always helped me with rent. I'm in the middle of an important art project that could really take off. Eduardo, you're 35 years old. How many important art projects have you started in the last 7 years? That's not fair. Artists need time to develop their work. You wouldn't understand because you're stuck in that soulless corporate world. The soulless corporate world that allowed me to pay my own bills since I was 22. Get a job, Eduardo. The bank of Grandpa is permanently closed. But it was Isabella and my parents who really provided me with the deepest satisfaction. 2 months after the family meeting, my mother called me. For the first time in years, her voice didn't have that tone of condescending superiority. There was something new there, real panic. Marina, dear, we need to talk. Your sister is in a very difficult situation. Mom, if you're calling to ask for money, the answer is no. No, that's not it. Well, not exactly. It's just that. The boys are having difficulties at the new public school. They're being teased for not having the brand name clothes they used to have. And Isabella is working so many hours she can barely see them. And there was a long pause. And I thought maybe you could talk to your grandfather. Explain that we've all learned our lesson. That we'll be more responsible from now on. Mom, you've had decades to be responsible. Grandpa gave you more money than most people see in a lifetime, and you wasted every penny. Why would this time be different? Because now we understand. We see how we were wrong. You understand that you're out of money. That's not the same as understanding you were wrong. If Grandpa died tomorrow and left millions to you, you'd be broke again in 5 years. Marina, we're your family. Now there was anger in her voice, that old indignation seeping in. You have an obligation to help us. Where was that family philosophy when you left me alone at that resort reception? When you sat there like cowards while Isabella humiliated me in front of strangers? We thought she was just joking. We didn't know she had actually removed your reservation. You knew exactly what was happening. And you didn't say a single word in my defense. So don't come now talking about family obligations. I hung up before she could respond. 3 weeks later, Isabella showed up at my apartment. She hadn't warned me, just showed up at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. When I opened the door, I almost didn't recognize her. No professional makeup. Hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Jeans and a basic t-shirt, probably the first time I'd seen her without designer clothes in over a decade. She looked ordinary, exhausted, human. Can I come in? Her voice was hoarse, as if she had been crying recently. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, but curiosity won. I stepped back and let her in. Lucas was in the living room, grading papers on the couch. He looked up, recognized Isabella from family photos, and discreetly gathered his papers. I'll finish this in the bedroom. Good luck, he murmured to me as he passed. Isabella stood in the middle of my modest living room, looking around as if she were seeing my apartment for the first time. Which, technically, she had never deigned to visit me before. It's cozy here, she said finally. It's what I can afford with my small analyst salary, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Why are you here, Isabella? She sat heavily on the couch, as if her legs could no longer support her. I lost my job today. I'm sorry to hear that. No, you're not. She laughed bitterly. And you're right not to be. I was a terrible employee. I arrived late, complained about everything, expected special treatment because I always got special treatment. I sat in the armchair across from her, waiting. Rodrigo and I are getting divorced. The words came out in a rush. He blames me for us losing everything. Says my irresponsible spending ruined his chances of saving the company. That if I hadn't provoked Grandpa, we'd still have the monthly money and could have held things together until the economy improved. And you? What do you think? She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. I think he's right. About everything. I ruined our life. I ruined my children's lives. And all because I was so obsessed with looking successful that I forgot to actually be successful. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. The boys ask me every night when we're going back to our real house. When they can go back to their old school. When they can take tennis lessons again. And I have no answers for them. What do you want from me, Isabella? I don't know. Apologies? Forgiveness? Advice on how to survive when you have nothing left. She let out a desperate laugh. It's funny. I spent years mocking your lifestyle, and now I'd give anything to have the stability you built. You want to know the difference between us, Isabella? I leaned forward. I never had anything to lose. I started from zero and built slowly. You started at the top and only had to fall. And that fall hurt because you never developed the muscles to climb back up. So you're saying it's too late for me? I'm saying it's going to be hard. Harder than anything you've ever experienced. You're going to have to work jobs you hate, earn salaries that seem insulting, save every penny. You're going to have to say no to your children repeatedly. You're going to have to swallow your pride in ways that will hurt. I paused. But no, it's not too late. You're 34 years old. You still have time to build something real. She looked at me with something that resembled hope. Would you help me? Teach me how to do what you did. Why? Why should I? Because despite everything I did to you, you're a better person than I am. Her voice broke. That night at the resort, when you just left without making a scene, without begging, without debasing yourself, I realized you had a strength I never had, and I hated you for it. But now I just want to understand how you managed it. I stood up and went to the kitchen, returning with 2 glasses of water. I handed one to her and drank from my own glass while considering. I can teach you how to make a budget. I can show you how to cut expenses, how to look for better jobs, how to start saving. But I can't do the work for you. And I won't give you money. Not even a penny loaned. I understand. And you need to apologize to Grandpa. For real. Not a self-interested apology trying to get the money back, but a real acknowledgement of what you did and how much you hurt the person who always took care of you. Isabella nodded, tears streaming down her face. I can do that. I will do that. Then come here Saturday morning at 9 a.m. We'll start by reviewing your finances and creating a realistic plan. She stood up, as if she couldn't believe I was really offering help. Marina. Why? After everything I did. Because despite everything, you're still my sister. And because Grandpa taught me that true strength isn't in crushing people when they're down, it's in giving them the tools to get up, if they're truly willing to do the work. I walked her to the door. Before leaving, she turned one more time. For the record, I'm sorry. For the resort. For all the years of mean comments. For treating you as if you were inferior. You were never inferior. I was just so insecure about my own lack of achievement that I needed to diminish you to feel better about myself. I accept your apology. After she left, Lucas came out of the bedroom. Are you sure about this? After everything she did. I hugged him, resting my head on his chest. I'm not sure of anything. But being angry forever is exhausting. And maybe, just maybe, she's really ready to change. Isabella showed up the following Saturday, punctually at 9 a.m., with a notebook and pen in hand. We spent 4 hours reviewing every aspect of her finances. It was brutal and humiliating for her to see everything documented in black and white. Jesus Christ, she whispered when we finished the list of debts. 340,000 Brazilian reals in total. How did I let it get so bad? A little at a time, I replied. That's how most people bury themselves in debt. Small decisions that seem insignificant at the moment. We spent the following weeks creating a recovery plan. She applied to 47 jobs before landing a position as an administrative coordinator earning 4,500 Brazilian reals per month, a dramatic drop from her previous lifestyle, but a start. Rodrigo, true to his word, filed for divorce. The battle over custody of the twins was ugly, but eventually they reached a shared custody agreement. My parents were more stubborn. It took 6 months of financial struggles before they finally called me, truly humble for the first time in their lives. Marina, my father said, his voice small over the phone. Your mother and I would like to meet with you. To talk. To truly apologize. We met at a simple cafe, not the fancy restaurants we used to frequent for family gatherings. They looked aged, worn in ways that went beyond the merely physical. We've spent the last few weeks talking, my mother began. Really talking for the first time in years. About how we raised you two. About the choices we made. About how we treated you. My father took over. We failed you, Marina. From the beginning. We saw Isabella's beauty and charisma and assumed she would be our ticket to high society. And we saw your intelligence and responsibility and took them for granted. We thought you'd be fine on your own, so we focused all our attention on her. We turned you into our forgotten daughter, my mother added, her voice breaking. And when you became successful despite our neglect, we resented you for it. Because it proved we didn't need to have spoiled Isabella so much. That our favoritism was a choice, not a necessity. I remained silent, letting them speak. We're not asking for forgiveness, my father continued. We don't think we deserve it. But we wanted you to know that we see now. We see what we did. And we have to live with it every day. We also wanted to thank you, my mother said, for helping your sister. You didn't have to do that. After everything she did, it would have been justified to let her drown. But you chose the harder path. I took a deep breath. I didn't do it for you. I did it because it was the right thing to do. We know. That makes it even more remarkable. My father reached for my mother's hand. We raised you to be independent because it was convenient for us. But you became something we never intended. Genuinely strong. Genuinely good. And that had nothing to do with us. It wasn't a movie moment where everything was instantly forgiven. There were no emotional hugs or tears of reconciliation. But it was a start. 4 months later, Grandpa Antonio called me to the office again. When I arrived, there were 2 lawyers present that I recognized from our estate restructuring work. Marina, sit down, Grandpa said, gesturing to the chair in front of his desk. I have some important news. My heart sank. The way he said it, the tone in his voice. Grandpa, are you sick? He smiled gently. I'm 78 years old, dear. We're all sick in one way or another at this age. But no, nothing terminal if that's what you're asking. Just realistic about mortality. One of the lawyers opened a folder and slid documents across the table in my direction. I've finalized my new will, Grandpa continued. And I want you to know what's in it. So there are no surprises later. I started leafing through the documents, my eyes widening as I processed the information. The company goes to you, he said calmly. All shares, complete control. You've demonstrated that you have the financial head and ethical integrity to run it properly. Grandpa, I don't know anything about running a construction company. You don't need to know about construction. You need to know about finances, people, and difficult decisions. You can hire construction managers. What I can't teach someone is integrity, and you have that in spades. He pointed to another section of the will. Your investment properties, the apartment buildings, the commercial spaces, also go to you, along with 60% of the liquid investment portfolio. And the rest, 20%, will be divided equally between Isabella and your parents, to be distributed in a trust managed by you. They'll receive modest monthly payments, but they can't touch the principal. When they die, whatever's left goes to the grandchildren. I looked at him surprised. You're still leaving them something? After everything. They're my family, he said simply. And while they've disappointed me deeply, I won't leave them destitute. But I also won't give them the opportunity to waste everything again. You'll control the funds and ensure they're used appropriately. And the other 20% goes to charity, educational institutions that help young people from low-income families go to college. Kids like you could have been if I hadn't been around. Tears stung my eyes. Grandpa, you're the only member of this family who understood what I was trying to teach, he said, his own voice thick with emotion. That money is a tool, not an identity. That hard work matters more than appearances. That integrity can't be bought. He reached over and covered my hand with his. I trust you to honor my legacy, not just by preserving the wealth, but by using it meaningfully. And I know you'll do that because it's not who you are, it's who you've made yourself. One of the lawyers cleared his throat. There's one more thing, Miss Marina. Your grandfather has established a separate fund for you, accessible immediately. 500,000 Brazilian reals that you can use however you want. No restrictions. 500,000. I could barely process it. Grandpa, this is too much. It's less than 5% of what I gave the rest of the family over the years, he said dryly. And unlike them, I know you won't waste it. Want to buy a house? Invest it? Donate it? The choice is yours. You've earned the right to make those decisions. 6 months have passed since that meeting. Grandpa is still healthy and active, to my relief, so the inheritance remains just a future plan. But the changes in family dynamics are undeniable. Isabella is in her 9th month at work as an administrative coordinator and was promoted to senior manager. She still struggles. Raising 2 boys alone on a tight budget is brutal, but for the first time in her life, she's earning something through her own merit. She comes to my apartment twice a month for financial planning sessions, and slowly, very slowly, she's starting to pay down her debts. Most notably, she closed all her social media accounts. I can't pretend anymore, she told me. And honestly, it's a relief. I spent so much time creating a fake version of my life that I forgot how to live a real one. My parents sold their big house and moved to a modest 2-bedroom apartment. Both work part-time, my father at the hardware store, my mother at the supermarket, not because they need to financially, Grandpa still ensures they have the basics, but because they discovered they felt better contributing. 40 years of retirement would be numbing anyway, my father told me recently. At least now when I get home, I feel like I've earned my rest. Our relationship remains cautious, polite, but not intimate. Maybe it never will be. Some wounds are too deep to heal completely. But there's respect now, where before there was only condescension. As for me, I used 200,000 Brazilian reals from Grandpa's fund as a down payment to buy a 3-bedroom apartment in a good neighborhood. Lucas and I got engaged last month. Nothing extravagant. Just the 2 of us on a weekend in the mountains where he knelt near a waterfall and asked me to build a life with him. We invested 250,000 Brazilian reals in a conservative mix of index funds and bonds. The remaining 50,000 Brazilian reals I set up as an emergency fund. And yesterday, Isabella sent me a message I never thought I'd see. Just made my first credit card debt payment beyond the minimum. Only 500 Brazilian reals extra, but I had to tell you. For the first time in my adult life, I'm going in the right direction instead of the wrong direction. And I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you for not giving up on me when I had given up on myself. I reread the message now. Sitting in the office Grandpa set up for me in the company building so I can learn the business while still working at my regular job. From here I can see the city of Sao Paulo stretching out below. Millions of people each with their own struggles, triumphs, and complicated family stories. I'm not going to pretend this had a perfect happy ending. Isabella still struggles with envy sometimes. My parents still occasionally slip into old patterns of favoritism, and there are days when I still feel the sting of anger at what they put me through. But here's the thing about revenge. The real version, the lasting one, isn't about crushing people. It's about living so well, building something so solid, that the contrast with what they lost speaks for itself. Every time Isabella comes to my apartment for financial advice, she sees the stable life I built. Every time my parents see Lucas and me having dinner, they witness a relationship built on mutual respect and not social status. Every time Grandpa looks at me with pride, they're reminded of what they could have had if they had made different choices. That's the sweetest revenge of all. Not their destruction, but my success. Not proving them wrong through anger, but through quiet achievement. And you know what? It's more satisfying than I ever could have imagined. My phone rings, it's Grandpa. Marina, dear, can you stop by here tomorrow? There's a potential investor interested in the company, and I want you to lead the meeting. It's time for you to start taking on more leadership responsibility. I smile, my heart filling with purpose. Sure, Grandpa. What time? 9 in the morning. And Marina? I'm proud of you. I hope you know that. I know. I love you, Grandpa. Love you too, dear. I hang up and look at the engagement ring on my finger, a simple solitaire that Lucas saved for 6 months to buy. It's not the huge rock that Rodrigo gave Isabella, but it's mine. Earned. Real. That night at the resort, when I stood alone at the reception while my family betrayed me, I thought it was the worst moment of my life. Now I understand it was the best. Because it was the moment I stopped waiting for them to change and started changing myself. The moment I stopped begging for respect and started earning it. The moment I realized I didn't need their approval to build a life worth living. Sometimes the best revenges aren't planned. They're simply lived, one honest day at a time, until you look back and realize you won not by tearing others down, but by rising so high they couldn't help but notice. And that, in the end, is the only victory that truly matters. If this story touched you in any way, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming injustice. Your comments and support make all the difference for other people who may be going through similar situations. Until the next story.